So, I just want to get sort of an idea of how far back you remember names and dates and so on. So, your dad's name was
Edward
Edward?
Paul Robinson or Robichaud. Robichaud. Robichaud.
Robichaud.
Yeah, they
And-
pronounce it Robichaud.
Do you remember his birthday?
My father's birthday was July 10th. I'm not that sure of the year.
About what do you think it was?
Well, he was about 69, I think. He wasn't quite 70, and he died the year. Now, Mary Ann was born. Mary Ann is what, 58?
Mm-hmm.
So
She-
figure
she
out
was
how old.
58, 68. She was
Nin-
born 1958.
Mary Ann was born in
Yeah.
1958. So
He was 69 then.
yeah, I don't
if he
think
was
he had quite
70.
reached 70.
So 58 years, 68, about 12. So like 1882.
18, yeah, 18, yeah, I thought it was in the 1890s, but I'm not
18,
sure.
1897.
No, that would make him 63, because it was.
She's,
Marion's born in 1958, so there's 58 years to the beginning of the century.
yeah, so go back another 10. That's 90 or something like
So
that.
1888,
89, yeah.
90,
89,
something
you're
like
right.
that. Okay. And was he born Robinson or was he born Robichaud?
I think he was born Robichaud because my cousin Billy, my father's brother Bill,
Yeah.
and my cousin Billy, he was at my brother Billy's wake, and he had his father's birth certificate, a copy, and it was William Robichaud. So I don't know when the name was changed.
So, William Robichaud,
Yeah, William John Robichaud.
John, and that was your grandfather.
No, that was my father's brother.
Oh, that was your father's brother.
I don't know what my father's father was because he died when his mother was very young when she had the 4 little kids.
Okay, so your dad was Edward Paul
Yeah.
Robichaud, probably born around July, and then his brother was William John Robichaud.
Yeah, and he had 2 other brothers.
And who were they?
My uncle Alfred,
Alfred.
I don't know what his middle name was, and
And
then he had a brother Henry, whose real name was George, but they called him Henry.
well, I met Henry because remember he came up
Yeah,
and started.
he's the one I
Yeah.
gave the skidoo to.
So your dad there were four boys in his
Boys,
family,
yeah.
and they're probably all Robichauds.
Yeah, they were all born Robichaud.
Yeah. Were your was your dad the oldest, the youngest? Remember?
I think he was the oldest. Yeah, because I think Henry was the youngest.
Do you have any idea where he was born?
My father was born in Fitchburg, Mass.
Fitchburg, Mass. Huh? Do you know where in Fitchburg? Or the
No.
hospital or anything?
No.
And how do you end up in Fitchburg? You know?
Well, that's where, that's evidently where his mother and his father, whether they lived there or they came from somewhere else, I know.
And you don't know the names of his mother or father?
His mother's name was Mary. I don't know what the father's name is. He might have been another William or Edward, I'm not sure.
Do you have any idea what her maiden name was?
No.
No. So Edward's mother was named Mary,
Yeah.
and you don't know Edward's father's name?
His father?
Yeah.
No, I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know whether because they were very small when the father died, so I don't know.
Okay. So you were born in Cambridge?
I was actually born in Arlington.
At Sims?
No, I was born in, there was they called it a convalescent hospital, like a maternity hospital where a woman would go and have their babies and stay there for a length of time, then come home. And this was on Walnut Street, Arlington.
And remember the name of it?
It was just called like the Walnut Street, was it a hospital? I don't know if it was called a hospital or just a convalescent place. But it was mostly maternity, and I always remember my mother telling me the head nurse who was there, her name was Mrs. Benjamin. You see, the years ago, they didn't talk too much about
Right,
history and things like that.
right.
Because I know my sister Barbara was born there, I was born there, Pauline was born there. And then when she was having Billy, there was another, this type hospital on Chester Street in Cambridge, and Billy was born there.
Billy was born in Chester Street?
Yeah, and I think Connie was born there too, and of course then Lenny was born at home on Rice Street.
No, so Lenny was born on,
On Rice
Rice
Street,
Street?
North Cambridge, yep.
and so your whole family, your dad, your brothers and sisters and everything, you grew up on Rice Street?
No, when I first was, my mother, I lived on, I don't know if you remember where the French church was on Ringe Avenue in North Cambridge. Down in the last street there was called Notre Dame Ave.
Uh-huh.
And we lived, that's where I was after I was born. We lived down there. And there was a small first floor apartment. And then from there we moved to Rice Street.
Okay.
So we were on Rice Street until when the Depression came.
Do you remember the address?
7 Rice Street.
7 Rice Street. And your dad owned the diner, right?
He started out, he was a builder. He and his brother Bill were building houses, and then
Uh-huh.
for some reason, he got out of that and he bought a diner. And it was called the Mass Bay Diner. And it was on the corner, it was down just between Harvard and Central Square. It was
On what street?
It was Mass Bay Diner was on the corner of Mass Bay Street and Mass Avenue.
Mass Bay Street? And so, between Central Square, and Central Square was past Harvard Square?
Yep.
Okay, so that part of Mass Ave that goes from Harvard Square down to Central
Yeah.
Square, and someplace along there was a diner?
Yeah, he had that one, and then he got, whether he lost the lease or the lease ran out, then he moved the diner further, yeah, and it was in a St. Paul's Parish, and that was not quite into Central Square, it was called the Crimson Diner. And then he lost that, that's during the Depression, he lost that.
So was he doing the cooking and everything? Was he the chef and?
Yeah, he was shot order. It was only open, it wasn't open late at night, it was mostly breakfast and lunches, I
Right,
think.
right.
But he also had a beer license, which
A
was
beer?
a beer, not liquor, just beer. And when he moved it to the Crimson Diner, it was across the street from this, I think it was St. Paul's, it was a Catholic convent. And the nuns used to complain, see, in this area, there's a lot of construction, and the men used to come for lunch and
Right.
have a beer. And they put a complaint in that they were drunks falling out of there at all hours of the night. And as a result, with politics, he lost his beer license. And then, of course, it was during the Depression, has been already in progress, and so he just lost everything.
So what did he do after that?
Well, then, of course, I remember him coming home, because he had all this stuff, pots and pans and things from the diner. And I remember I was very young, seeing my father cry. He was
Uh-huh.
very naturally upset. So then, of course, then they started with the WPA and the PWA, those projects. So he got a job. He was working, I guess that was for the state.
Yeah.
And it was a pretty good job there. He was in charge of when they brought in a lot of stuff, clothing and stuff like that to distribute for the poorer people during the Depression.
And
And he stayed with that for quite a while, and then then he went to work in the Navy Yard.
as a laborer-like type job?
Uh,
As a laborer type job?
I don't know just what his job. I guess it was more or less a laborer,
Okay.
but he worked at the Navy Yard.
Do you remember anything else about any of your other father's ancestry at all, where they came from, besides
No.
Fitchburg or anything like that?
No, that's as far as I know with them. That's where they were born and raised, and
Now, remember you said you had a cousin or something that got in contact with you?
that was on my mother's
That
side.
was on your mother. So let's talk about your mother. So what was your mother's name? Mother's name?
My mother's was Genevieve Marie Dudley.
Genevieve
Yeah,
Marie
Dudley.
Dudley, right?
Yep.
And was Dudley a French name or an Irish name?
Well, the name. She always said that they were descendants from an Indian tribe,
Iroquois, right?
Iroquois,
Yeah.
that the real name for Dudley was Duclos.
Do you have any idea how that was spelled?
I just took a guess. I would assume it's Ducloc, something like that. I'm not sure.
So that'd be Irish. That'd be French for sure.
Yeah, more French.
Okay. And so, what did so your mother's, when was she born?
My mother was born, I believe, in North Cambridge. Down in my grandma, they owned a house where the French church was. This was the Notre Dame de Pity Church. Across the street, my grandmother, Nana Dudley, that's where they had a house. They owned a house. And
Who was it? You say Nana? You called her Nana?
Nana Dudley, Nana.
Was that
N-A-N-A.
Genevieve's mother?
That's my mother's mother.
Okay. And do you know her name?
Her name was Catherine, and
Catherine.
they called her Kate.
Do you have a middle name, do you remember?
I don't know.
Catherine Duclos, or was it Dudley?
It was always Dudley that I know of, but things were very different.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, my family too,
Yeah.
names
Yeah.
changed.
Yeah,
My
they
family.
changed their names. Nothing ever went through the courts or anything.
Right.
They just didn't like your name, change it.
Yeah, they were all trying, I think a lot of those people were trying to
Yeah.
become more American and they wanted to Americanize their last name.
So Catherine Dudley, which is your maternal grandmother.
Yeah, and her maiden name was Coleman,
Wow.
Colman. And I think that,
So let's back up with Genevieve. Do you remember her birthday?
who?
Genevieve,
My mother.
your mother.
Her name was Genevieve.
What was her birthday?
Oh, her birthday, let me see. I think she was August. I'm not sure of the date, but it was late in August. I don't know the exact date.
What about year?
Well, she would have been, what time did you have my father down for? She was 2 years younger than my father.
Okay.
2 years younger, so about
90?
1894, something like
Yeah.
that. And she was born in North Cambridge, as far as you know.
As far as I know, there were 8 siblings, so 8 of them, and and her father died very young. I never remembered him. I think the youngest one, my mother's family, was only 3 years old when the father died. And then my mother, at 15, went to work for the telephone company.
Wow.
And she was the second oldest, and because she was a twin, her brother Johnny was her twin.
I can't get over how you remember all this.
Do you know anything about Johnny at all?
Yeah, he was an alcoholic.
Well, that goes with
Johnny
his
had-
name.
It was amazing because my mother and her twin, they looked so much alike. My brother Billy and I looked exactly like. I was older than Billy, but we looked just like
I
my
met him,
mother
yeah,
and
yeah.
uncle. They called him Nemo. He had 6 children.
Johnny's nickname was Nemo?
Nickname was Nemo.
Do you know why?
Why?
Yeah.
I have no idea. This is my Uncle Francis was called Bowser. Don't ask me why. Yeah, no. My Uncle Johnny, my mother used to tell the story that where they lived in North Cambridge, and Johnny was going out with this redhead lady, my Aunt Liz. And my mother would tell us things. We never asked my father much. And she said that one of her friends one day asked her, they weren't very old, and if Johnny was going to marry the redhead. And I don't know whether my mother said, I don't know, or yes or no, I don't know. But someone said, well, he better, because she looks like she's about 9 months pregnant. Well, she had her first child, my cousin John, who my grandmother and my mother's older sister, Aunt May, took him to, she raised him at my grandmother's house. So John always lived with the grandmother, and then they had
Did they marry?
John eventually, yeah, my cousin John finally, he got married. And,
To that same woman?
Yeah, but he married the redhead. Then they continued to have more kids. There was Jean, and there was Margie, and there was Arthur, and Betty, and one more. Because he had a group of 6 kids, counting the boy that lived with my grandmother.
Okay, so, and those were all your cousins?
Yeah.
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 Do you have any idea what Kate Dudley's birthday was?
Whose?
Your grandmother's?
I haven't got the foggiest. No idea.
But you do know her last name was Coleman
Her
before.
last name was Coleman.
Any idea where she was
Maiden name.
from or where she grew up or anything like that?
As far as I know, they all grew up right around. I don't know whether they were all in Massachusetts. They
Right.
didn't live anyplace else.
Yeah.
So I assume it was all North Cambridge.
So, your cousin Billy or whoever who was doing the genealogy before?
It was my cousin Paul O'Keefe. His mother was my mother's sister. She was my Aunt Dorothy. And he was working on that family tree. And he was the one who said that was from the
Iroquois?
Iroquois Indian tribe that migrated down through Vermont into Massachusetts.
I see.
But then he didn't get too far with it, and he had cancer, and he was working on this for quite a while, and he died, so.
Do you have any idea, any of his relatives, if I wanted to contact them, his children or anything like that you would know? Where was he when he called you? Where was he living when you
He
talked
was
to him?
living in, where was he? I think at this time, they moved, they were like from West Roxbury. My Aunt Dorothy lived in West Roxbury, and her husband was a cop in Boston. And they had 3 boys and 2 girls. Now, as far as I know, Paul died and Jimmy died, and I think there was one brother, whether he's still living or not, I don't know. His name was Tom. And then the girls were Catherine and Dorothy. And the last time I saw which one was Dorothy, I was working at Mount Auburn, and we had this emergency come in, and it was the last name was Brown, I think. My cousin Dorothy was her husband. He worked for Edison, and he was up in one of those buckets working on wires, and a wire hit the bucket, and he got severely burned. And we had him as a patient at Mount Auburn. He was I kept him in a private room, and he had a lot of disfiguration. I remember our Jimmy, coming to the hospital to visit me to have his blood pressure done or something, and I introduced him to my cousin's husband. But
Paul O'Keefe was the person that was doing the...
yeah, they lived in West Roxbury. Then I don't know whether they moved toward the Cape or what.
And was your Aunt Dorothy your mother's sister?
Sister, yeah.
Okay. And so that's why he was O'Keefe. That was the husband's name.
Yeah, Tom O'Keefe.
Tom O'Keefe. He's a cop in Boston?
Yeah, he was a cop. He worked out of one of the toughest stations in Boston, Dudley Square or something like that. I don't remember.
Okay. But when you talked to him, he was living down south, wasn't he?
My cousin, I don't know if he was down at the Cape at that time. I think that's where they were. Because I know that when my cousin Jimmy died, after him, his brother, I went to the wake. Yeah, I think they all lived in the West Roxbury, that area. And then some of them moved to the Cape.
Okay. So, your mother had a mother named Catherine Kate.
And what?
Your mother's mother was Catherine Kate. Your grandmother.
Yeah, it was, Kate
Kate.
Coleman, and then she was Dudley.
Right. And what about your mother's father?
No idea, because she was only 15. He died, and then she went to work. I don't know.
Was she married
idea.
at 15?
I know. My mother was 15 when she went to work in the phone company, and the youngest in the family I know was my Aunt Catherine. She was only 3. I remember my mother saying that. So I had never seen my grandfather.
Mm-hmm. So you never met so on your father's side, did you know your grandfather on your father's side?
No.
Did you know your grandmother on your father's side?
Vaguely. I remembered she was in, I think after my brother Sonny would tell me a little bit more, because he was about 6 when my mother took him, and when my father married my mother. She was only very young, and she had the 4 boys, and the husband died. And I think she had a breakdown. And then the boys were being separated. And I know at some time whether she got out of a mental hospital or whatever, and she was set up. See, there was no Social Security, there was no welfare, nothing. And what supported them, I don't know. She would have an apartment or something with the boys. And then periodically, whether she went back in the hospital, but I knew it was my father's had an uncle in North Cambridge, and his wife, they had 6 children, but she took my brother, my father and his brother Bill, and raised them. The other 2 were, according to them, adopted, but they never changed their name, because I know my Uncle Henry is the one that used to come to the house. He was brought up by some very wealthy people, because he went to private schools. And that's all. I just remember them saying this. I don't know. As I said, they never talked about any of this stuff.
Well, so Henry went to a private school, he seemed sort of like he didn't have a job or anything when he came by our house.
He was sort of a vagabond, but I don't know what else. He lived in New York, and he was married a couple of times to a showgirl. I mean, he had a very different life than my brother, my father, and my Uncle Bill.
Yeah.
And then my Uncle Al,